Have you ever felt like you were walking a road no one else could see? Like the very ground beneath your feet was shifting, quietly, yet purposefully. This isn't confusion, it's clarity being born. Most people retreat when life begins, to unravel, unaware that the unraveling is the beginning of becoming. If you're questioning everything, if you feel pulled away from what once comforted you, or if silence speaks louder than noise, don't stop now. These aren't signs of being lost. They're the quiet confirmations that you're finally being found. Stay until the end of this message, because what you'll hear might finally confirm what your intuition has been whispering all along, that you're not falling apart. You're falling into alignment. There are moments in your life when nothing feels quite right anymore. And yet, strangely, you're more aware than ever before. Attention begins to stir beneath the surface of ordinary routines. You walk the same paths, speak to the same people, perform the same tasks, yet something in you resists. A quiet restlessness takes hold, not the kind born from boredom, but the kind that hints at something sacred trying to emerge. This restlessness is not a flaw. It is not a mistake. It is the soul trying to reclaim its voice after years of silence. You are not being punished by discomfort. You are being summoned by transformation. The soul doesn't awaken in still waters. It stirs when the old patterns become too tight to contain your becoming. The modern world has trained us to discomfort to fix it, suppress it, or medicate it away. But from a deeper psychological lens, this unrest may be the first true sign that you are shedding a layer of yourself that no longer serves your deeper nature. You might call it anxiety. You might label it a crisis. But underneath the label is something ancient, a signal that your psyche has outgrown the identity you were taught to wear. The restlessness is the chrysalis cracking open, not because something is wrong, but because you're finally growing. You may not yet see where the path leads, but you know with an aching certainty that the path you've been walking can no longer sustain your spirit. And that knowing, that sacred discontent, is the invitation to begin, not with clarity, but with courage. As you begin to walk this internal path, a peculiar thing begins to happen. The things that once lit you up no longer do. The ambitions that once fueled you now feel hollow. The conversations that used to entertain you now feel heavy, like noise. Even the victories, the external achievements, the social validations feel muted, drained of meaning. And it confuses you. Because shouldn't success feel fulfilling? Shouldn't reaching your goals bring you peace? But here is the deeper truth that few speak of. When your soul is awakening, it withdraws its energy from the superficial to redirect it toward the eternal. You are not broken for feeling disconnected from what once brought you joy. You are simply shifting. The psyche, in its journey toward integration, begins to reassign value. That which is shallow begins to lose its shine. That which is hollow becomes unbearable. The noise of the world no longer distracts you like it. You find yourself craving stillness, meaning, and depth. Not because you are falling behind, but because you are catching up to your inner truth. It is not a retreat from the world. It is a redirection of your attention toward the essence of what matters. The world may look at your lack of enthusiasm and call it apathy. But it is not apathy. It is refinement. It is discernment. You are not losing your fire. You are learning where to place it so it no longer burns you out, but instead lights your path. This recalibration is often lonely. The conversations you once enjoyed now feel foreign. The roles you played now feel like masks. You find yourself pulling away from people, not because you dislike them, but because something in you is craving solitude, reflection, and silence. And in that silence, you begin to hear your own voice again, a voice that was always there, but long buried beneath obligations, expectations, and noise. You are not broken for needing space. You are not isolating yourself because you are weak. You are finally strong enough to sit with your own soul and listen. The world may mistake your solitude for loneliness, but you know the difference. Loneliness is the pain of not having others. Solitude is the joy of finding yourself. As you navigate this solitude, there's an alchemical process unfolding within you. You begin to see things differently. You start to recognize patterns where you once saw randomness. You notice that certain people reappear just when you're facing specific emotional challenges. You start hearing the same phrase, message, or insight from completely unrelated sources. You glance at the clock and it's always the same numbers. Dreams become vivid. Coincidences become frequent. And what once seemed like chance now feels like design. This is not madness. This is meaning. The unconscious is speaking, not in words, but in symbols, images. And synchronicity. It is at this stage that the rational mind begins to wrestle with the symbolic mind. We are trained to dismiss what we cannot explain. But when you begin to notice the recurring signs, when the outer world starts mirroring your inner shifts, you are not imagining it. You are aligning with a deeper order. Jung called it synchronicity, the causal connecting principle between the inner and outer worlds. These signs do not guarantee comfort, but they do confirm that you are on the path meant for you. The more you trust the signs, the more they appear. But this is not about superstition or magical thinking. This is about becoming sensitive to the language of the unconscious, the language of dreams, symbols, intuition, and patterns that hint at a truth deeper than logic. In this heightened state of awareness, you are no longer chasing answers. You are attuning to meaning. You will realize that life is not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be lived. The signs are not there to explain everything to you. They are there to accompany you, to encourage you when your mind is filled with doubt, and to remind you that your journey is not in vain. When you see them in the strange timing of a phone call, in the perfect phrase from a stranger, in the unshakable feeling that something is shifting, pay attention. These are not accidents. They are echoes of your soul calling you forward. As you move deeper into this inner transformation, the need to be constantly surrounded by others begins to fall away. You no longer seek comfort in the crowd. The familiar no longer feels safe. It feels stifling. You find peace in your own company, not because you are antisocial, but because you are finally becoming whole. The fragmented self that once needed external mirrors for validation is beginning to integrate. The solitude becomes sacred. You walk alone, not in sadness, but in sovereignty. The deeper you go, the more you realize that this path was never meant to be crowded. The soul's journey is solitary, but never lonely. And yet, there's a paradox here. The more whole you become, the less the world understands you. Your language changes. Your values evolve. Your energy shifts. And the people who once felt like home may now feel like history. This is not betrayal. It is metamorphosis. When you are no longer willing to betray yourself to maintain connection, you are truly awakening. You no longer explain your truth to be understood. You live it. You embody it. And that quiet certainty, that unwavering sense of direction, even when no one else sees the road, is the compass of a liberated soul. Validation loses its power. Approval becomes irrelevant. You are no longer trying to fit into a life. You are shaping one from within. At first, this detachment feels foreign. After all, for years you may have built yourself upon the scaffolding of other people's expectations. You may have lived for the applause, the recognition, the affirmation of your worth through external measures. But now, something deeper has emerged. A self that no longer needs to be seen in order to feel real. A self that no longer needs to be celebrated in order to feel valuable. You begin to understand that authenticity is its own reward. That to live in alignment with your soul is to walk a path that only you can see, and that very few will understand, until they, too, are ready. This is why solitude is not a retreat, but a rite of passage. It is in this space between who you were and who you are becoming that true self-realization begins. The soul speaks not in volume, but in depth. It does not shout, it whispers. And only in silence can we hear it. When you find yourself sitting in a room alone, and you feel full, not because of what surrounds you, but because of what is within you, you will know you are on the right path. Not because it's easy, not because it's popular, but because it's real, because it's yours. And so the path unfolds quietly, symbolically, often without applause or clarity. But the signs remain. The restlessness, the silence, the solitude, the symbols. They are not warnings. They are confirmations. Not everyone will see them. Not everyone is meant to. But if you do, if you feel them, if you hear them, then you must keep going. You are not imagining the shift. You are embodying it. And in the next phase, something even deeper begins to stir. The willingness to let go of who you thought you were so that you can finally become who you were meant to be. When the world begins to speak back to you in patterns, not words, it signals a shift from ordinary awareness to symbolic consciousness. You begin to sense that life isn't just a random sequence of events, but an intricate web, woven together by forces that transcend logic. Something unseen is responding to your inner movement. You think of someone and they call your field, drawn to a particular book, and in it lies the exact phrase that brings clarity to your dilemma. You notice certain animals, numbers, dreams, or images showing up repeatedly, and though your rational mind dismisses them, your deeper self pays attention. These are not coincidences. They are invitations to participate in a more meaningful existence. The modern mind, conditioned by empiricism and skepticism, often recoils at such ideas. We are taught to worship certainty, to believe only in what can be measured or proven. Yet the soul does not speak the language of science. It speaks the language of symbol. The unconscious does not argue. It reveals it is subtle, poetic, archetypal. And if we are too quick to rationalize, we miss the whispers that guide us through the most profound transitions of our lives. Seeing patterns where others see randomness is not delusion. It is a deepening of perception. The symbolic vision is not a fantasy. It is an expanded reality. In this state of alignment, the inner and outer worlds begin to mirror each other. The psyche projects itself onto the fabric of existence, and the feedback loop becomes sacred. Life becomes an ongoing dialogue between your unconscious and the world, each event charged with potential meaning. But this awareness requires humility. Not every pattern is a sign. Not every dream holds prophecy, but some do. And your responsibility is not to decipher with certainty, but to relate with reverence. These signs do not predict, they point. They direct your attention to what needs to be seen, felt, or integrated. What matters is not whether others understand the signs, but that you trust your own sensitivity to them. The deeper your inner work, the more clearly you begin to perceive the outlines of your soul's unique path. The road is not linear. It loops, spirals, and sometimes doubles back. But with each synchronistic encounter, with each symbolic confirmation, your faith strengthens. You begin to feel that you are not wandering, you are being led, and that subtle reassurance is often enough to keep going, even when the terrain becomes dark or uncertain. And yet, in the presence of these signs, something else begins to emerge, a growing inner certainty that seems immune to external validation. Others may question you, doubt your choices, or struggle to understand your distance, your silence, your transformations. But within you, there is a knowing, a quiet clarity that does not need to be explained. You no longer crave agreement. You are not looking for applause. You are not building a life for others to approve of. You are aligning your actions with your inner compass. And that shift changes everything. This stage can be isolating. When you stop needing permission to be yourself, you often find that those who were once closest to you begin to fade. Not because there is anger or resentment, but because resonance has changed. You are not who you were, and they are not yet who they must become to meet you where you now stand. It is a painful but necessary part of individuation. The path of becoming is not about improvement, it is about unfolding. And as you unfold, the masks fall away. You no longer want to be liked, you want to be real. You no longer strive to fit in, you strive to become whole. This is when the misunderstanding begins. The world may label you as distant, arrogant, or rebellious. But what they do not see is the depth of discernment you are developing. You are no longer reacting to life from woundedness. You are responding from wisdom. And wisdom, unlike knowledge, is not loud. It does not argue. It does not beg to be heard. It simply moves through you, silently reshaping the way you live, the way you speak, and the way you carry your presence. You begin to trust yourself, not blindly, but deeply. This trust is not rooted in pride, but in alignment. When your inner and outer worlds begin to match, when your values and your behavior become one, you no longer have to convince others of your truth. You live it. And that embodiment is your authority. It will not be understood by those still living through personas, but it will be felt by those who are ready. You become less concerned with being followed and more committed to being found, not by the masses, but by those who are waking up to the same reality. You are now anchored in. But perhaps the most profound shift of all comes when you begin to release the very things that once defined your identity. You let go, not just of people or places, but of beliefs, goals, versions of yourself you once held sacred. This is not giving up. It is giving in to the deeper current of life that no longer supports your old trajectory. You realize that letting go is not loss, it is liberation. The attachments that once made you feel safe now feel heavy. You no longer want to carry what no longer belongs. You no longer cling to what your soul has outgrown. This shedding can feel terrifying. After all, who are you without your roles, without your old dreams, without the relationships that shaped you? It is in this space, the space of unknowing, that true rebirth begins. The ego panics in the face of the unknown. It seeks identity, clarity, certainty. But the soul thrives in mystery. It expands in the silence after endings. It breathes in the gaps left by what has been surrendered. And slowly, something new begins to take shape, not constructed by willpower, but revealed by grace. Letting go is not passive. It is an act of profound trust. Trust that life, in its wisdom, is clearing space for something more aligned to emerge. Trust that what you release will return in a higher form, or be replaced by something truer. Trust that you are not being punished by the pruning, but prepared for the blooming. And most importantly, trust that the void is not empty. It is full of potential. The unknown is not darkness. It is the womb of your becoming. You begin to live in cycles rather than straight lines. You honor seasons. You feel when something is dying and no longer resist it. You feel when something is calling and no longer delay. You live not from obligation, but from resonance. You listen to the subtleties of your own energy. You notice when something drains you, not just physically, but spiritually. And you no longer force yourself to stay where your soul does not thrive. This is maturity. Not the kind taught by culture, but the kind earned through inner initiation. You realize that to evolve is to disappoint others, that to honor your truth is to risk being misunderstood. But you also realize that the cost of betraying yourself is far greater than the discomfort of outgrowing what no longer fits. And so you begin to choose yourself, not selfishly, but sacredly. You learn to say no without guilt. You learn to walk away without bitterness. You learn to stay only where your presence is met with presence. Each of these shifts, from recognizing signs, to embodying certainty, to releasing attachment, is not separate. They are threads in the same tapestry of transformation. You are not doing something wrong because you feel different. You are doing something rare. You are becoming conscious. And consciousness is not a destination. It is a commitment to stay awake, even when it's easier to sleep. To stay honest, even when illusion is more comfortable. To stay present, even when the present is uncertain. And that is where the real journey begins, not in the outer world, but in the silent corridors of your inner life, where meaning is not given, but discovered.